What's going on, YouTube? I hope you're having a fantastic day. Thank you for watching the video. We're going to be looking at my first buy-to-let property and my experience over the last few months dipping my toes into the world of property. So a little bit different from the usual Amazon FBA style content, but you know, this channel is about passive income and business, so I thought I'd share with you guys how I've been getting on with this new project. So please like and comment on the video and enjoy it. Right guys, so we're going to jump straight into the video. I've written down a number of questions here and points that I want to run through with you guys. So I've got my iPad, which I'm going to be looking down at and working through these. A few of these are questions from you guys that I've received through Instagram. Seem to be loads of interest in buy-to-let, this buy-to-let idea and this project. I think people are curious about how it works, and hopefully from the perspective of someone like me who's completely new to something like this, it'd be even more interesting for you than being a beginner. Although we will obviously have some people who are experts in the field who will be able to give me some tips in the comments below. But we'll kick it off with the first point. So what is a buy-to-let? Right, if you don't know, very, very simple. All I'm doing is I'm purchasing a property to let it out, right? Pretty self-explanatory, right? So lots of different ways of doing it, and I'm going to walk you through my way of how I did it and why I chose these particular approaches opposed to some of the other ones that were available to me. So just a note, guys, this for me, I think the idea came to me mid last year. I did a lot of research into it over a number of weeks. I spoke to someone who's got a lot of experience in this field who gave me a lot of help, which I'm very grateful for. And I did a course on how to successfully start your own buy-to-let property company. So I'll link that course below in the description as well. And, all of this is about self-development, investing in something new, diversifying my income streams and adding income streams in. So I haven't got all of my eggs in one basket. And it's it excited me, the prospect, the idea of a buy-to-let, improving a property, renovating it, bringing it to market, and letting it out. Just the concept intrigued me. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start this, other than, again, another secure passive stream of income. So why did I choose buy-to-let over other things that I could have done? Right, I could have purchased a property and done a huge renovation on that property and just sold it, right, straight away, not looking at letting it out. I could have sold it and looked to bank the difference between what I purchased it plus what I spent on it, and then the difference for what I sold it at. Now, the reason I didn't do that was because I haven't got much experience renovating houses, especially not, proper significant renovations on houses, whether it's structural or just big jobs, right? I don't particularly want to be getting my hands too dirty with things like that, especially when I've got no experience with it. So the reason that the buy-to-let stood out to me was because it was very hands-off and it was very passive. And it's more of a long-term investment than a quick flip on your cash that you'd be looking to do had you done it the other way. So third point, how much did I invest? Now, at present, the purchase price of the property was around 96,000, right? With legal fees and all the other bits and bobs that you need, we're going to round it up to £100,000. Now, I actually bought this property outright, out of choice, but in hindsight, I might not have done it that way. But I purchased the property outright to speed up the process, right? I really wanted this particular property, and the fact that I could just buy it rather than going through the process of getting a buy-to-let mortgage it was the easiest option for me at the time. So I was able to move quickly on that purchase, and I was able to buy the property and secure it. Now, I'm not going to talk too much because I'm going to move into my other points on this point, which I told myself I wasn't going to do. But that was how much I invested. So what type of house did I buy? So under guidance from a few different people, I wanted to try to find a two-bed property, avoiding flats, a two-bed property around the 100K mark in good condition. It's a terraced house, and you know, it's a nice house. I liked it. I said to my partner when I went to view it, I'd live here. You know, if that was my first house, I would be happy. It was nice, but it did need some work. And the guy who was there before me had actually done a significant amount of work to it, which saved me some hassle as well. So with those sort of properties, they're easier to rent out. They come and go off the market very quickly. If you have a 5-bed property, it sometimes can be more difficult to rent it out. Although when you get tenants in, they could be more likely to stay for longer if you've got, you know, a big family in a house rather than a young couple. But they're quick turnaround. You're always going to be able to have them occupied, and less maintenance, less work than a big 5-bed property with a smaller investment sum as well, which is a big one, right? So a 2-bed terraced house was the house that I chose. I went to see probably about 8 properties, 6 to 8 properties, and every time I went to see each of these individual properties, it was just a no. Straight away when I walked in, within a minute or so, I got a vibe for the property, and it wasn't right. I just didn't like it. There was always some reason. The boiler was in the living room. You know, I was scraping my head on the ceiling when I walked in the front door. It needed too much work. They weren't in the right location. There was something very specific that I was looking for, and I wanted it to be relatively close to where I lived, but not too close for comfort, right? So I can keep very separate from it, which I have, but at the same time, if I need to go down there when I was doing maintenance work, I was able to go to and from that property quite easily. So the process, I started looking, and the idea popped into my head late 2020, and I started looking at properties at the start, started looking at properties at the end of 2020, and again, 6 to 8 properties, and then this was the final one, and within about 5 minutes I knew this was the one that I wanted, and I put an offer in. Now, the actual original purchase price of that property was £110,000, but there was a survey done so it was £110,000. Someone actually put an offer in, offer accepted, and proceeded with that purchase. But they had a survey done, and at the stage they had the survey done, they mentioned something about the roof. There was a build-up of moss on the roof or something, and I read that survey, and it actually was enough for that buyer to pull out. They were a first-time buyer, it wobbled them, and they didn't want to go ahead with it. But what that meant was that the seller then dropped the price significantly by £10,000 down to 100, and I then came in, I read that report, somehow they gave it to me, which was helpful to me because I didn't need a survey, and because it was very recent that it had been done, and then I got the price knocked off down again to 96, so benefited quite largely from that there. Now, a lot of people will ask, did you get a mortgage, and what type of mortgage did you opt for, and why? Well, I've already said, haven't I, that I bought it outright, but that wasn't the end goal, right? That was just a means to an end, to buy it, to secure it, and then from that point you can do things in a different order, right? So there's different ways of doing it. 2 ways that I'll mention here. The first way is that you put a 25% deposit down on the £100,000 house, and you get a loan to value of 75%. So the bank basically gives you the 75k. You've put the 25k deposit down to make the 100,000, and you've got a £75,000 mortgage on that property. Now, the reason I didn't do it that way was because I didn't want to go through all the hoops and the processes. I've had a mortgage before with this property, and it takes time, and I wanted to put an offer in, and I wanted to go with it quickly. So I just bought it. And what I'm doing is something slightly different, where after I bought it, I'm raising finance against the house. I'm remortgaging that property. So I essentially went to a broker, which I was going to mention in this video as well. I said to the broker, I've got a property that I own outright, and I'm looking to raise finance, remortgage this property at a 75% loan to value. So it being worth, again, ballpark about 100k, I wanted to get that 75k back. Now, he said to me, that's typical, and shouldn't be a problem. Now, some of the hurdles that I had, which I didn't consider, probably because I'm inexperienced and, you know, I haven't learned everything about this process before starting it, but I'm doing this through a limited company for some of the tax benefits, and it's just a more cost-effective way of me doing it. If I did it personally, being a higher rate taxpayer, I get slammed with tax. So I did it, I pay enough tax already, so I did it through a limited company. Now, a limited company, when you buy a property through a limited company, presents some obstacles. It can just take longer. There's fewer lenders who want to lend to a limited company. God knows why, but they don't want to. I didn't know this beforehand. As well as that, a lot of lenders for this 75k loan to value, this mortgage that I was trying to get, they wanted me to have owned it for 6 months, right? It's just a measure they have in place that banks, typically their lending criteria is that you owned it for 6 months. Now, I hadn't owned it for 6 months. I've still only owned it for 3.5, but I wanted to get the mortgage straight away. So what that did was it limited the amount of lenders who would lend to me. I used a broker, which I would suggest. He had no fees. If you guys want to know who he is, I can give you a link to his website and a personal email, a business email for him. But he was awesome, right? He helped me through the process. He guided me through all the boring mortgage stuff that you've got to go through, and it made a huge difference. So he went out and found me a lender. But again, it took a little bit longer than it should have, and I was a bit more restricted with the types of lenders that I got. And that meant that I had a slightly higher interest rate, only slightly higher interest rate. So I still have not got those funds yet, right? And we are talking, I've been going through this process and I've been on it as well, constantly reaching out to the broker, to the mortgage company, to the solicitors. It's just taken a lot of time. I think it hasn't helped that there's been the stamp duty holiday. People have been busy at the end of June trying to get all the completions through. Solicitors have been busy. But it's been about 4 months, which it wouldn't have taken that long had I done it the other way around and got the mortgage first. And in hindsight, I would have done that. The only benefit was buying the house quickly. So I've had the mortgage offer through. It's all gone through. I've signed everything. It's been passed over to the solicitors. I'm just waiting on some of the particulars to be ticked off, right? It's a tick box exercise. They ask me a million questions. I give them a million answers. They ask me a million more questions. It's back and forth until eventually they will release the funds. So it's with the solicitors now, and it's due to come at any time in the next few weeks. So that's how I structured it. So what type of mortgage did I go for? So there's two main types of mortgages when you are considering a buy-to-let. You either have a mortgage that is interest only, which means you borrow, let's say for example £75,000 from the bank, and you just pay the interest on top, and you never actually repay the capital amount that you borrowed. The other alternative is a mortgage where it's part repayment, part interest. So you are actually reducing the balance of that capital amount that you've borrowed. So essentially you own a little bit more of the house every month that you make payments. So I'll explain a little bit about why I chose interest only. Why did I do that? A lot of people ask me that. So they said to me, Dill, why would you choose to only pay interest on the house rather than repaying it every month as well? Which means at the end of 25 years or whatever it is, you own it yourself. You own that property. So let's say, look at the £75,000 example. I'd be paying back on a repayment and interest only, and interest, sorry, mortgage. I'd be paying back some of that 75k plus interest. Now in 25 years, we'll just use that as an example, I would own the house. Now with interest only, I don't own the house. At the end of those 25 years, I have to repay that 75k. Now, I've obviously got that as security banked against the value of the house, but I own the house, but I still owe the bank the amount that I've lent from them. So it's an interesting one. With interest only, the repayments every month tend to be smaller. And when I say tend to be, they are smaller. They're significantly smaller. So every month when I'm repaying my mortgage, I'm repaying less, right? A lot less. And what that means is I have a monthly income from that property. Now that monthly income over time, looking at the 25-year example, isn't far off what the value of the house is. So the difference between a repayment and interest mortgage or an interest only mortgage, the difference, the amount I'm saving every month and having as an income from choosing interest only because the repayments are smaller, when you add that up over a 25-year period, it's not far off what the house was valued at anyway and what I would owe the bank anyway. So they're very similar. They just, to an untrained eye, if you just looked at the two, you'd think, well, obviously I'm going to go for a repayment and interest because I want to own the house. Whereas I'm thinking to myself that I would rather have a monthly income. It doesn't matter whether I don't own the house at the end because I can just sell it and pay the bank back. And I've got a monthly income for the next 25 years. So interest only was what I chose. Now, something to mention as well, because I haven't talked about this. How much does it rent out for, the property that we've got? And how much is the mortgage, right? So at the moment, my rental income is $595, right? We're going to say £600 a month, just round it up to £600 a month. So £600 a month every month is coming in. Now at the moment, I haven't got a mortgage because it hasn't gone through yet. So I don't owe anything. It's just £600 a month that comes in. But I've invested £100,000 that's tied up in that property for £600 a month. So that's the situation at the moment. Now, a lot of people asked me, before I get onto this actually, how much will the mortgage be? The mortgage will be just under £200 a month that I will owe. So the interest only mortgage is £200 a month. If I was looking at a repayment and interest, it was nearly £500. So £200 a month is what I will be owing the bank once I remortgage this property and have the buy-to-let mortgage. Now, a lot of people ask me, why didn't you buy it outright? Right, I've got the 100k, I've bought the house. Why are you getting a mortgage if you don't need a mortgage? And this was something that a friend helped me with. And again, it's actually very simple and it makes perfect sense. So if we look at the example, right, if I've invested £100,000 in this house, I'm renting it out for £600 at the moment. Now, I do use a letting agency, which they fully manage, so they take care of all the queries, the issues, the problems, if there were any, which there haven't been yet. But they take care of all those things, and they charge about £70. So that means I'd be bringing in, without a mortgage now, if I dropped that idea, £530 every single month. Now, over a year, that would be £6,360 per year, with 100k invested, right, at the moment. And that's a 6.3% yield or return on my investment, right, at that every year, annually. 6.3%, 100k in, 6,360 back, 6.3% yield. Now, if we look at another example, let's say I opt for the way that I'm doing it, which is I've put 25 in, or I will have, and I've got 75k back from the bank. Now, remember I said I've got my mortgage repayments of 200 a month. Now, if I'm having rental income of 600, with the mortgage scenario, I deduct 200 to repay the mortgage, which brings it down to 400, and then deduct the 70 for the letting agency, and it brings it down to 330 per month that I've got as my profit, should we say, if we're not looking at tax and things like that, 330, opposed to 530 if I bought it outright. But if you look at that over a year, it's 3,960, but as a percentage of my investment of only 25,000, the yield is 15.8%. So I've only invested 25k and I'm getting just under 4k back, which is a 15.8% yield. With the 100k investment, I'm getting a 6.3% return. So it's almost triple the return. I haven't got to invest as much. And what does that do? It frees up the extra money for me to do other things with, i.e. repeat the process. So as an interesting point, if you look at this example, now if I take the 100k that I mentioned and I did not invest that all in one property, I could split it into 4 buy-to-let properties. 25 times 4 is 100, right? Now, if that's the case, I've got 4 incomes of 3,960 a month, right, for each of those rental properties, and I'm making significantly more than if I'd bought it outright. Now, on top of that, I would also see the appreciation over 25 years for 4 separate properties instead of just one, and that could be huge. So I'm limiting myself by buying it outright. The smart way to do it is to finance and repeat the process. So appreciation, guys, and if we look at this example, a few different sources I've used for the appreciation, although it can differ. Some years it might shoot up. The last year it's gone up by like 20% in Wales, which isn't typical at all. Other years it can drop. But on average, if we look at an appreciation rate, a percentage, compounding at 3.8% over 20 years, right? So that property is increasing by 3.8% every year for 20 years. If I've invested £100,000 in 4 properties, 4 buy-to-let properties, right, 25k each, that would mean each property appreciating at that percentage rate, it would be £210,837 its value in 20 years, which means that I'm making about 110,000 on that single property in how much it's appreciated by in 20 years. Now, 110k multiplied by 4 properties appreciating is 440k. Now, I'd be missing out on those other 3 properties, the 110 times 3, 330, had I just bought the property outright. So, assuming it went up at 3.8% per annum, and that was on average over 20 years, there'd be 440k that I would profit if I were to sell them all at the end of the 20 years. I know there's a lot of figures here, guys, but it is to do with figures. There's a lot of figures involved in this. So if we look at the total then, right, for this investment, if everything goes to plan, would be the appreciation over 20 years, which would be 440k, plus my rental income, which is 3,960 if I was to do a remortgage with a buy-to-let mortgage. 3,960 times by 20 over 20 years, and then multiplied by 4 properties is 316k. So 440 plus 316 is 756,000 in 20 years from now. How much involvement do I have in this? Not much. It's passive. I've got a letting agency who manage it for me, although I could probably manage one by myself. I don't particularly want to have the hassle of people WhatsApping me and asking me to come down and fix things. I'd rather outsource that to someone else, especially as I start adding to, my portfolio. I'm not going to want to be the one to take care of all those things. It'd be too stressful with all of the other things that I do with my businesses. So in terms of how passive it is very passive. You know, going to view the houses wasn't hard. It didn't take long. Getting the broker to sort all of the mortgage out for free wasn't very hard. It was time consuming it took a long time, but it wasn't very time consuming. So it is very passive. And, you know, like I mentioned to you guys, for me, it's important for money not just to be sitting in the bank, but to be ensuring that your money is making you money. It's not doing anything in the bank. It's just sitting there, pointless being there. So we want to try to invest that into different things and have different streams of income. And, you know, it just excited me doing something like this. You know, we were able to, I went in with my partner, you know, we did some renovation work on the house for a few weeks, spent some time in there making it nicer for the tenants. Tenants seem really nice. They're happy. They're in a position where they can't buy at the moment, so they need somewhere to rent, and they've now got a lovely place in town that they can rent out. You know, I had a phone call from the letting agency about maybe a month ago asking me if they could have a kitten, and you know, I thought to myself, well, from a business perspective, what will a kitten do? Well, possibly rip up the carpet and go to the toilet on the carpet and cause me problems in the future. But balancing that with just being a decent human being, and I love cats, I've got cats, I don't want to be a sort of landlord that is not nice. I want to keep my tenants happy, and I hope then for that to be reciprocated in different ways. They'll want to stay there for a long time and they can enjoy their time there. So that's sort of how it's worked, guys. I know there's a lot of figures and a lot of numbers there, but that's how it's worked for me. And we're going to see how it goes. I've had no issues yet, no phone calls from the letting agency, rent being paid on time, and you know, it seems to work well. And, you know, some of the properties that I will be looking at in the future, there's a few that we've looked at that are just crap. You know, they're just sitting there doing nothing. They're not structurally, they don't need tons of work, you know, new roofs and, you know, all the walls smashed through and all renovated, but they need a significant amount of work. And then you're bringing a nice property to our local area and someone's able to rent that out. You know, not everyone wants to buy a house, although many people do. Some people aren't in a position to. House prices are rising, I believe it's like 7 times faster than the average wage, so it's hard to get a mortgage. People haven't got the income to get a mortgage. Banks have got low loan to value offers or no offers at all, so you've got to have a huge deposit, which people can't save for because minimum wage is too low. It's tough, right? Which means there is a market for rentals, right? I've rented in the past and I've needed to rent. If I didn't rent, I'd have had nowhere to live. So yeah, I mean that's how it's worked for me, guys. If you've got any questions, I'm trying to think if I've missed anything about the process or how it's worked, but I think that's it. So let me know in the comments below, guys, if there's anything else that you want to know. Again, this is just a random video because I got loads of people responding to my Instagram post about what I've done, and I thought I'd share it with you. Back to normal Amazon FBA content soon. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.